We really don't have anything to report out from closed session, so we're back in open session. So this meeting is recorded for live streaming and archiving on the district YouTube channel. And my mic sounds really loud. That's not usually that loud from here. That's good. Who would like to, you know what? Dr. Moss, would you lead us?
Oh, sure. Would everyone please stand? I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Okay, can I get an approval of the agenda as written, please?
I move that we approve the agenda as written.
Thank you. Can I get a first? Or second, sorry.
I'll second.
Thank you, Cece. Roll call, please.
Me.
Ms. Grubbs. Yes.
Trustee Grubbs. Trustee Moss. Trustee Maselli.
Yes.
And Trustee Hirsch.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, and I see that we have no highlight this evening. Next up is our reports and,
Superintendent?
Huh?
Sorry, my mistake.
I don't see our students here today, so we're going to go ahead and move forward. Dr. Wright, you're up.
All right, good evening. I just want to start my report going back to October 26th. I had the opportunity to go down to the Foothill Band Tournament where both our middle school and our high school band had an opportunity to perform. That was my first band competition, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. And I don't have a trained ear, but listen to our kids play, even at the middle school level. I mean, it sounds flawless, right? So, and I think the judges thought so too. Our marching band at BMS, Carla Guard, and drumline placed second. Symphonic band and drum major placed first. And our high school excelled as well. Marching band Division 4A, first place. Wind Ensemble Division 2A, first place. Color Guard Division 4A, second place. I know there was another competition in the Central Valley last week, and I know we have Fairfield coming up, but yeah, I think I'm hooked. So I really enjoyed myself, and the kids they were awesome. I do want to share our Ruby Bridges Walk to School event. It's become almost a cornerstone or something that we do here in Benicia. It's on November 14th. I did send out a schedule to the board, so if you would like to join a walk at a particular school site, we have the locations identified and the time that it's going to start. So really looking forward to doing the walk to school on November 14th. Liberty High School. Got to celebrate Liberty High School. They're awesome. If you remember the California Model School Continuation High School, they were going to come out and do a visit. Well, that visit took place on October 28th and 29th. And at the end of that visit, they recommend that Liberty High School move forward with the honor, which means it now goes to the state. Now, if the state validates the report in January, they'll get the honor and they'll be celebrated in San Diego on April 24th through April 26th. Our understanding in meeting with them is, she didn't say it in these words, but she said, if my report goes forward, that's what it's going to be. That's the way I took what she said. So very proud of Liberty High School, and we're just looking forward to celebrating the work that they do there. The BUSD Staff Wellness Program. So it's something that we just kind of launched, right? We were talking about staff wellness and LMI, and it's just something that we've always been really working on, like what can we do? I think I shared I was at a conference and Palo Alto superintendent got up and he talked about what they were doing. They hired a therapist just for staff members at $200,000 a year. And clearly we don't have that, right? So we wanted to get creative to figure out how can we blend staff wellness with also just camaraderie and team building. So first thing we're going to do is a step challenge, November 20th through December 20th. We're going to walk off those turkey pounds. And, you know, I wasn't sure how interested people would be, but as of this morning, we have 25 different teams that are signed up within our district. Some teams have up to 9 people on there, so it's quite a bit of buzz going on. And yeah, and the friendly competition trash talk has started. I got to tell you, I realized like, oh man, I sent out all these emails, but I don't even have a team, right? So I had to create this free agency list. So, and I put it out there. If you don't have a team, put your name on this list and you can pick each other. So I put myself on a free agency list. Dr. Jennings, thank you. Your HR team adopted me. So I now have a home and I think we're going to win the competition. We also send out the interest of some classes. We talked about, hey, would you be interested in doing art or yoga, hiking? And there was a lot of interest there too. So we're looking at launching that portion of it in January when we come back from winter break. Just mark your calendars. I have a dessert with the superintendent event on November 12th. This is next Tuesday from 6 to 7:30 right here in the boardroom. We'll send out the reminders to our community and they're welcome to join us and engage in conversation about our district. State of the District event, we've been talking about that. We put out save the dates. It's going to be on January 22nd. It's going to, it kind of morphed a little bit. We're going to start off with doing a student showcase and a program showcase to make sure that they're involved. We're going to have our band involved. Our CTE programs will be right here in the boardroom showcasing their work. We spoke with our art teachers today. They're going to display student art. We're going to display student academic work, essays. It's going to be a great event. And we'll do a program, and it's going to be here in the Liberty Gym. We'll do probably about 30 minutes of dialogue on the state of the district, and then we'll end the event with a panel. So we'll probably have a mixed panel, student staff panel. Dr. Beatson, Dr. Jennings, and also Ms. Barrington will probably be our host and engage in a panel so that we can learn more about our district. So trying to get creative. We want to make it interactive, and I think it's going to be a great event. And just, I want to end with November observances, Native American Heritage Month. We had Dia de las Muertas. I said it right this time.
Yes, you did.
I got it. Diwali. Thanksgiving. This week is actual National School Psychologist Awareness Week. Me being a former school psychologist, keep up the good work. And Veterans Day. So I just want to thank all the men and women who served our country and keep us safe on a daily basis. And that's all I have for today.
Thank you. You said Palo Alto has a what on their staff?
They have a full-time, they hired a psychologist or a therapist that just provides services to staff. And you should have saw the room, all of our jaws dropped. And he was clear. He said, listen, I understand where I'm at. I'm in Palo Alto and money falls out of the sky and it's a little bit disgusting. And we were able to do that. But and he shared the reason why he did it, because he wanted to offer something a little bit more than what the EAP program had to offer their staff. And it's something that he wasn't sure if staff would be willing to come forward and use this service, but this person is booked regularly. And it just talks about the way our work has changed in the business that we do, the amount of stress that we're enduring. And we need an outlet. And we have to continue to get creative on finding outlets to support one another to get through our work, because it's hard work.
So to the staff of Benicia Unified School District, I wish we had that kind of deep pocket to be able to provide that service for you, but Palo Alto's Palo Alto, yay them. So moving on to board reports. Anybody?
I do. I have one.
Okay, Ms. Grubbs.
I just wanted to shout out to Robert Semple and their amazing transformation of the school for Dia de las Muertes, as I struggled through that. But anyway, it was incredible. And the transformation was unbelievable. I mean, there were little LED lights, votive candles everywhere. It was transformed. The gym was transformed. It was beautiful. And so to the staff and to all the parents that worked so hard, and it was very cold that night, and the band was out there, but anyway, it was a beautiful evening. So thank you.
I've attended that in the past, and when I walked in the first time, I was blown away with how it just was so moving. And so it was so special. So if any of you have an opportunity to do that in the future, please take advantage of it because it just changes something in you. It's beautiful. So thank you, Ms. Moore. Anybody else, please?
Yeah, just briefly for me, I had the opportunity to visit again the Solano County Office of Education, and it was basically for us to see their programs at their alternative site out on Clay Bank, and then in addition, we went over to the juvenile hall facility. So the Solano County Office of Education also handles the educations for our youth who are incarcerated. So we were able to walk through and kind of see what they have. They actually have a barbershop programs. I mean, not a barber, like a barber college within.
That's
Um,
cool.
They have a recording studio there. They're also, they have it so that students can also access Solano Community College. So in some cases, they can get coursework there within the facility, but if they're on furlough, if they have furlough days, they can actually go over to the school, over to Solano College, kind of transported back and forth. So just, good to revisit. I know that we all went to go visit their program before on Clay Bank. So that they actually had quite a few folks there, representatives from like different assembly member or congressman, not Congress, Senate offices, and then also our governor. So yeah, so it was nice. That's it.
Thank you for that. Anybody else? No, I have nothing else either. So we're going to go ahead and move on to comments from members of the public. Do we have any, Ms. Martinez? We don't have any. Okay, so we're going to move on to the consent calendar. And I'm not even, I don't need to read that since there's no comments to members of the public, from members of the public. So background information on the items on the consent calendar are provided to the board prior to the meeting. A common motion takes action without discussion on a roll call vote unless a discussion of items is requested by a board member. So can I get an approval of the consent calendar as written?
I move that we approve the consent calendar as written.
Okay, can I get a second, please?
I'll second it.
Thank you. Roll call, please.
President Seda?
Yes.
Trustee Grubbs? Trustee Moss? Trustee Maselli?
Yes.
And Trustee Hirsch?
Yes.
Now, in this area, I know we have a few special things. We have a few resolutions and we have one very generous donation, which we want to acknowledge that Miss Natasha Harris donated an upright piano to Mary Farmer. And it's so appreciated that the kids and the teacher will have an opportunity to hear this beautiful music. So we really want to thank you for that. And then we need to do a separate roll call on resolution number 2425-12 CDU. This resolution is adopted yearly in order to certify the approval of the governing board to enter into this transaction with the California Department of Education for the purpose of providing childcare and development services and to authorize the designated personnel to sign contract documents for the fiscal year 24-25. Okay, anybody have any questions about that? Okay, so can we do a roll call vote?
President Seda?
Yes.
Trustee Grubbs? Trustee Moss? Trustee Maselli?
Yes.
And Trustee Hirsch?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Next resolution, number 24-25-15 CDU. Signature authorizations with the California Department of Social Services for the fiscal year of 25-26. Any questions? Okay, roll call, please.
President Seda?
Yes.
Trustee Grubbs? Yes. Trustee Moss? Trustee Maselli?
Yes.
And Trustee Hirsch?
Yes.
Okay, and finally, resolution number 24-25-16, a declaration of obsolete books. Questions?
No.
Nope. Roll call, please, Ms. Martinez.
President Seda?
Yes.
Trustee Grubbs? Trustee Moss? Trustee Maselli?
Yes.
And Trustee Hirsch?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. First up in our presentations and communication area is Dr. Beetson with the grad requirement policy update information. Take it away.
Thank you. Good evening, President Zeta and trustees. I'd like to invite Ms. Kleinschmidt up because we're going to present this together. So this is really a first reading of the graduation policy. We talked a little bit about it at our last meeting. We've updated the board policy. There will be a change, so I'll have to even make a change from what was already published because we got new information from the state after this was already published, so I'll talk through that in a minute. But we really wanted to take some time and kind of walk through what we're proposing those changes are to be in compliance with the new laws that are coming out. So just as a reminder, the state of California has a set of graduation requirements, which you can see. We went over those last time. Our current Benicia Unified School District requirements, which are almost in direct alignment with the state of California. We have our own graduation requirement of get focused, stay focused, which is at the 9th grade level, and we do 4 years of English instead of the required 3 years. And then just as a reminder, what it takes to be eligible for entrance into a UC or CSU, which has even more requirements than what the state or we have. So that's just a reminder page here. And then again, just to review what's new. So the things on the top, so the English does not change, math does not change, science, social studies, VAPA or PE, but what will be new for the graduating class of 2030 is a 1-semester class in ethnic studies. It is required to be offered starting next school year. Also coming in for the graduating class of 2031 is a class in personal finance. It must be at least 1 semester, and that is required to be offered starting the 27-28 school year. And then again, just to remind everyone, another one that's in conversation but has not passed yet, but we want to keep an eye on is a year-long computer science course. So again, we're waiting information on that, but that could be a potential additional graduation requirement. I did not include any of that information in the updated proposed policy.
Did they, would ethnic studies fall under social science?
So ethnic studies can be taught, yes, what our proposal is that it would be in the social science, social studies elective. You could have it embedded, and we talked about this when we did our board study session. Right. So some districts have embedded it in art, in English, and other classes, as long as it is ethnic studies forward, if you will. So all of those components, and based on the direction you gave at that time, we really wanted to do a standalone course, at least to start with.
Okay. The personal finance would come under the math years?
So personal finance can be taught with a math credential, a social studies credential, or a home economics credential.
I was wondering where it fits on our categories of math, science, social studies.
So currently, we offer a year-long personal finance course that is taught in the math department. And so it can count as a student's second year of mathematics.
Yeah, that's what I was going for.
Right. And so, yep, and I can talk a little bit more as we kind of walk through this because we've gotten some new information from the state, and I'm actually waiting for one more response to a clarifying email around that. So based on all of that information, the way we're proposing this policy be updated is we continue with 4 years of English, including, 2 years of mathematics, 2 years of science, 3 years of social studies, the 1 year of the VAPA language or CTE, and 2 years of PE. Now, there will be a change from what you're seeing on your screen here. One of the components we talked about last time that we would like to continue to move forward is that if a student is in 2 years of a CIF sport, so it has to be a CIF sport, and it has to be 2 seasons in the same school year. So that was new information that we got. So they can't play tennis in 10th grade and then tennis again in 11th grade and have that count for an exemption for 1 year of PE. They have to be in, say, a fall sport and a spring sport in the same year.
And would that be for 10th grade or 11th grade? Because
They could
might be jumping ahead of you, but
So they have to take
confused.
9th grade PE. That part
Yes.
does not change. They can they can choose to waive PE2. Many students take PE2 at the 10th grade level, but they don't have to take it at the 10th grade level.
Okay.
So the conversation that we've had and that we met with the PE department was, if a student in either 10th grade and or 11th grade takes 2 seasons of CIF, they could waive that second year of PE. If by 12th grade they haven't done that, they're in PE too. That makes sense? So one of the differences from what we talked about last time was that the both sports seasons has to be in 1 year. So they can't stretch it out over 2 years. The other change that we got clarification on was marching band. And so marching band would count marching band and color guard because they do all that work together. And that's a year-long course and they spend hours and hours out there. They would get, if you authorized this, they would be able to get that PE credit through marching band. It would be considered a PE course, and we would update our course outline to match that. So they wouldn't get exempt from PE too. That makes sense. So with sports, you get exempt. With marching band, marching band would count as a PE credit. Does that make sense? Okay. Just making sure. And one of the conversations, we had a lot of conversations with the PE department, and we expressed, and you had expressed this at the last time, is that we are not interested in doing layoffs of PE, but that there could be opportunities here for students to, not for students, I'm sorry, for the staff to come up with some other really interesting PE electives, because we had, how many students on the wait list to take?
We had about 80 students on the wait list this year that we did not have space for in our PE electives, mostly upperclassmen, 11th and 12th graders. And so we looked at that as opportunity, that if we had that space available, they could have potentially taken a PE elective this year. And it was great discussion with the PE department, with excitement around the opportunity to get creative and look at really the model actually that the middle school has with advanced PE. We don't currently have that same model with advanced PE. We have 3 PE electives, so there's some choice other than PE2 with yoga, dance, and weight training, but maybe we can extend beyond that to offer a few other options for students.
Students would love that. They love PE. They do.
Yeah.
And many of the students may choose, even if they're in 2 seasons of sports, to continue to take PE.
Right.
That doesn't mean they will all, not. But what it does allow is some space for students, say, even in band takes up a slot in your schedule, it does free up some space in their schedule to get in some other things that they're wanting to. So I will make that adjustment in the policy. I apologize that we got the information after this was already published. The other piece that we've added in is ethnic studies for 1 semester and personal finance for 1 semester. And based on feedback and conversation that we had previously, we would be removing Get Focused, Stay Focused as a local graduation requirement for the class of 2029 and beyond. So
That would be next year's freshman.
right. So we would,
Would we be removing it next year?
yes. Yep, because what you'll see on the next slide is when we are proposing to roll these requirements in.
And with the personal finance, I think we talked about this at a prior meeting. Some of the Get Focused can be incorporated into personal finance.
There's some repetition in terms of Get Focused have some units that is very introductory 9th grade level personal finance and looking at planning and budgeting and what sort of lifestyle you have, what kind of job you need to have to make a certain income to attain that lifestyle. So they introduce some of those concepts for planning, but then of course go much deeper in personal finance. So some of that they would still get in that class as well. Yeah.
Any other questions before we move on to show you what we're proposing as the roll-in? Okay. So what we're proposing is that, and again, I will fix the band and sports exemption. So really band is the PE credit. Sports 2 seasons would be an exemption. Starting next year, that would be an option for the 10th and 11th graders next year, all the way through. So we would hope to start that next year. We would like to bring in ethnic studies next year. It has to be an elective next year. So it would be an elective. until you can see the 28-29 school year, it would be a graduation requirement.
That would only be offered to 11th and 12th grade.
Offered to 11th and 12th graders. And that is rolling in as a graduation requirement 1 year ahead of what the state is. But what we were thinking is it has to be on the books anyway next year. So it's easier to start with the 9th grade class than start with a class that's in 10th.
So that was one of my questions. So nobody in high school right now would have a requirement, but it would all start with next
year's-
entering class.
All of this would start with next year's entering
Okay,
class.
got it. Okay.
Our proposal, again, for personal finance, 1 semester, which is the requirement, again, would start next year, excuse me, as an elective. And for the next year's 9th graders, so the class of 29, would be a graduation requirement. And again, quite frankly, the reason we're trying to bring it in a little early is having a lot of rolling different timelines gets very confusing for students and families. So if we're going to make the change, our recommendation is we do it right here. Get Focused would just be off the books starting next year for those students. And economics would stay a graduation requirement for the next 3 years. And I did contact the state, and students, remember this piece where if students pass the 1 semester of personal finance, they can apply to waive economics. That is not a choice. That is a student's right. I asked because I know we had some conversation, like, did we want to keep it as every student has to take both? So I asked the state that question, and the way it's written in the law is that the students have that right to choose to waive that as a graduation requirement once, but not until the year that personal finance rolls.
So we couldn't keep it as a grad requirement.
No, I mean, it stays a grad requirement, but they can waive it. So it's kind of semantics, but so it stays as a state graduation requirement, but it can be waived by the student.
Right.
Replace personal finance with
Yeah.
But we can't do it on a full, like, we can't pull out economics, remember, and put in, at least unless they change the language.
Oh.
But part of the conversation I think you had talked about, Trustee Hirsch, was could the board decide to not allow that waiver? We have to allow the waiver,
Oh, got it. Right.
according to what the rule is right now.
And so for our own graduation requirements, we couldn't require students to take both because of that exemption in
Not,
the law.
not once personal finance rolls in as a requirement.
Got it.
29.
And then the other new piece of information that I'm still waiting for the last bit of feedback from the state is that currently we offer the personal finance 1 year that students can choose to take as a math class. They sent an email saying that that could count as math and the personal finance requirement. And because their answers have been changing a lot lately, I sent another clarifying email saying, I'm just trying to make sure I'm understanding. They can't get credit for both, but they could check the box for one, is what they're saying. But I'm asking the question again to see if we could maintain a year-long personal finance class, that if a student chose to take that instead of the semester elective, that it would count for math and for their personal finance requirement. And so that won't impact this quite yet because that's not personal finance isn't a requirement, and we'll continue to offer it next year. But I want to just triple confirm their answers.
Because the personal finance that they're requiring is a semester. The one that does the math is a year-long.
Right,
So they're different courses.
right. Yeah, I don't know that a student can take both because there might be too much overlap. So we'd have, right. I had one other thing I wanted to say. Oh, no. I was just trying to remember. I did ask a question because I think one of you might have asked, or someone asked the question about the state has a 3-year social studies requirement. And when a student waives economics, they're really down to 2.5 years of social studies. And so the first answer I got from the state was that personal finance, yeah, it wasn't ethnic studies, I'm sorry, it was personal finance. What personal finance would make up that other half. However, when it can be taught by math, or it doesn't have to be taught by social studies. So they had to go find out, and then they got back to me and said that personal finance, when the student passes it, they waive economics, they're also waiving that other required 5-credit class.
These are all new questions for the state. So
That's
this
what
is
they
the
keep
first
telling me.
time they're
They
looking
say,
at that.
another great question.
Yeah.
Let me go find out.
Good job.
So basically, if they waive economics, then they're only held to 2.5 years of social studies.
So I have a question. I know you were saying sometimes you could take the math, and that would do the requirement for a social study, like you were saying, oops, sorry. Different classes could be cross-referenced and count for, they'd still get credit for one thing or the other.
That's,
How does that affect children, students going into college for UC? Is it going to be accepted as
so
a
that was
transfer?
that was really only the personal finance piece, and personal finance does not count as one of the math classes required if you want to go to a CSU or UC. You have to get through Math 1, Math 2, Math 3. That's what the requirement is. So we really want to get kids through those courses. And we're in some conversation about, are there other options if a student doesn't want to or can't take Math 2 for whatever reason, in addition to or in place of the year-long personal finance, if the state comes back and says, actually, we can't.
Discuss that in our board policy, math, different pathways. Do
we did.
Haley?
Right.
Discuss different pathways for math in our board policy.
So
Thank
there
you.
may be some other options. Any questions? I know there was a lot of moving parts. Do you have anything to add that I?
We covered all of it, I think, unless there's questions.
I have one question about so ethnic studies, personal finance offered at 10th or 12th, or I'm sorry, 11th or 12th. Do the students get to choose which year they take it in?
I'm going to let Ms. Kleinschmidt.
Yes, yeah, so
Okay.
that's really just a matter of their schedule and essentially their academic plan in terms of if they're working to fulfill A through G, and maybe they've got a different plan for classes, which a lot of our students do. They have it all very much mapped out now in their academic plan, and then working with their counselor to determine when it's going to be best to take that. I think we leave it open to 11, 12 because sometimes we do have students who want to graduate a semester or a year early, who are taking those classes as 11th graders to excel, or some who maybe they transfer in and they've already taken some classes that we do here at a different grade level. So it just allows a little bit more flexibility. And from our point of view and from what we're hearing from the community, they're wanting more flexibility in the schedule, more opportunities to take different electives or different classes at different grade levels. So I think that opens that up for us a little bit.
That's great. No, one of the concerns I had was if we put a requirement at 11th or 12th grade, I know so many kids who are in 11th and 12th grade, and it seems like all they take are AP classes, and those get weighted in their grades. But then I was talking to somebody who said, and correct me if I'm wrong, but when you're in 12th grade and you're taking AP classes, those don't weight your grade for college admissions purposes, right?
They will, but at the time you apply, you don't have grades yet. And so
Okay.
it won't show up on your transcript that you're submitting in November for your college application. They'll look at that after you've, if you've been accepted and they want to make sure you've maintained your grades.
Yeah.
They'll take a look at that. But really, your GPA at the end of your junior year is what's going to the college.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so that made me feel better if we're offering it in 12th grade. And then I also heard that for the AP classes, some of them, the schools, you take your test, and if you pass with a 3, sometimes you can waive out of certain college classes, but that's somewhat limited and maybe becoming more limited. So my overall concern was I just wanted to make sure that we put the requirements in places that weren't going to prevent people from getting the AP classes that they want, while still ensuring that they're at the right appropriate time for brain development and all that. But I was worried that we would be taking away and becoming less competitive. But it sounds like
We've tried to
not
be
too much.
strategic to address that,
Yeah,
exactly. And,
okay.
and having conversations about, are there opportunities for AP courses that will fulfill these requirements? For example, AP African American Studies is one that would fulfill the ethnic studies requirement. We've looked at maybe articulating personal finance or one of the other requirements, so that it might not be an AP course, but they can still earn community college credit, which is accepted everywhere, unlike AP exam scores. So looked into those opportunities. I know one of our teachers is here tonight, and she just articulated our econ class. So it's a requirement, but now it's also articulated so all of our students can earn college credit in that class. So
Yeah.
we like that model
That's
as well.
great.
Yeah, that is great.
And I would love, I know somewhat, I mean, it's somewhat related, but I would love to see if there's any more AP we can offer at 10th grade to give students that flexibility. Because it just seems like that junior year, and I know it's always been like that, right? Junior year is the hard year, but I hear about how many AP classes the kids are taking, and I'm like, what? It's a lot. So I don't know if we can spread it out a little bit.
And part of that is developmental because it is a college course, and so they're rigorous for sure. But one of the benefits of all of the conversation that you've helped us with and that our community and our staff has helped us with is this will open up a full year of elective opportunity for ninth graders who really don't have a whole lot. And they could get potentially into some of the CTE pathways earlier if they so choose. And then the other piece with this waiver thing around economics, our Ms. Kleinschmidt's staff is working on some potential electives to backfill that, and some of those could be some AP classes potentially. So there will be some other places for choice. So if a student passes the personal finance, they choose to waive economics, there will be something else in its place. And so we'll be bringing in the next few months many course outlines for your review and approval to fill in those spaces.
Great, thank you.
And then finally, just the last slide I have here is the same thing. It just is looking at it by which class is it affecting. Okay. Any other questions or things you'd like us to consider, because we will bring back in December the updated board policy for your approval, so then Ms. Kleinschmidt can work on updating the course catalog and all of that information, because students start choosing courses right after we come back. Is there anything else? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
We're going to talk about the CASP presentation. So Dr. Beetson, you're up again.
Absolutely. So I am so excited to bring you this presentation this evening. And I want to thank our site leaders who are here and give a shout out to them, because they've worked really hard to work with their staff and their students and their families around the importance of this assessment, really looking at instruction, and it's paid off. And so I'm going to spend a little more time than I usually will, but please, I will not go through every one of those data slides. I just really wanted you to be able to see them all, but I'm going to go through a few more than I typically would, just to do some shout outs. Again, I really want to just remind everybody what the purpose of CASP assessment is, what our current data is, and then understand what we believe the impact of what we did on these scores was, and then what we're going to continue to do into the future. Of course, I always start everything with our new vision and mission, which is very exciting and helps us call to action and get grounded in our work. And then we also have our diversity statement again, and part of the charge in both of those and in our LCAP goals is to really look at how do we start to close achievement gaps and opportunity gaps for students. And I think in this data that I'm about to present, you're going to see some of that happening. So just a couple of quick things around CASP. CASP came in 2014. It replaced the old STAR testing. The purpose is to measure students' mastery of English and math content standards and science. So science rolled in a little bit later, and that's called CAST, not CASP. It is computer-based, and so it adjusts to how the student is doing. So if the student's doing well, it will continue to get harder. If the student is struggling, it will back up a little bit, and that is so that it can get a more accurate reading of what the students really know and can do. The students in grades 3 through 8 and 11 take this for ELA and math, and 5, 8, and in biology in high school for science. And CASP is part of the Smarter Balanced Assessment, or SBAC, battery of tests. It is inclusive, so it's built into the CASP assessment are many accommodations, so students can change the background to black and the font to white, and they can change some size of things, they can highlight. So they built in tools that make it accessible for all, and then there's additional ones that you can turn on for students who have that in a 504 or an IEP. Excuse me. CASP also offers a variety of interim assessments that teachers can use with their students in shorter bursts to practice along the way. We use the data for decision-making. We know about the performance levels, met, not met, exceeded, and so forth. And we are held to accountability for how we do on these assessments. And so I'm going to start with celebrations before I even get into the numbers. But I think Dr. Wright said this a couple of meetings ago. We got a call one day from the state saying that we were, if not number one, very close to the top in math growth. So not in math achievement, but in our growth. We have almost 8 percentage point growth from last year. It was 7.7. And you might have seen it written up in some of the local journals and papers. So we were very excited and proud for that. And it really reflects the growth across all school sites and grade levels. We saw particularly high growth in our pivot grades, so at 3rd grade, 5th grade, 8th grade, and 11th grade. And our 11th grade had 10 percentage point growth in math, which is double digits, big. Benicia High, so remember we look at our high schools is Liberty, because Liberty's held to the same standards, Liberty and Benicia High. Benicia High had 11 points in math. Our middle school, I have to shout out to Mr. Nelson who is here. They had the most growth in the most areas across the school district. And so every grade level in English and math, and almost all but 2 student groups. Only 2 student groups didn't grow in English. Every other student group had gains, and so that was huge, and so we're very proud of that. All of our elementary schools had growth. We had really strong growth at 3rd grade, and Mary Farmer and Miss Fleming is here. 5th grade at Mary Farmer, you can see ELA and math both had 16 and 17 percentage point growth. I mean, those are just huge. We start to celebrate when we hit 5, right? Matthew Turner, Mr. Slater couldn't be here this evening, but his 3rd grade had 80% of their students meet proficiency. So they met and exceeded. Robert Semple and Miss Moore is here. 19 points in ELA in 5th grade and 14 points in math. And then Joe Henderson, 3rd grade, 70% in their 3rd grade math. So those are just really big numbers that we're very proud of. And then the next few slides are just breaking it down into our student groups. Math for our Hispanic students, 17 points at Benicia High School. Our students of 2 or more races at Joe Henderson. And that group, the students who identify as multiracial is really growing in Benicia Unified. So we have our African American population, or people who identify as that, is shrinking, and the 2 or more multiracial is increasing. And so that's where we're seeing a lot of growth there. 90% of those students met proficiency in math at Joe Henderson. Our African American students at the middle school had a 17-point gain. And our students with disabilities grew at the middle school, Farmer and Semple, and then socioeconomically disadvantaged students, almost every grade level showed growth. So really proud of that work. Oh, yeah.
Dr. Beetson, I have a question, and this is maybe so our audience watching online can understand. Why is it that we have these subgroups the way they are? I feel that they're not very, I don't know why. I know some of them why they're like that, like socioeconomic disadvantaged students and homeless student, I understand that. But as far as the races, I'm not sure I understand why we have it separated that way.
Why we break them.
Why
out
we
into
break
groups.
them out.
The state breaks them out into those different groups, and they monitor all the different student groups that way. And one of the things to know is students can fall into multiple groups. So you might be socioeconomically disadvantaged and a student with a disability, and so you get counted in each one of those groups. And so it's really to make sure that some of our students who have been marginalized or we have not served as well in the past as we should, so it's monitoring by student group, and that's a state requirement. And it goes, yep. Absolutely. And so the next several slides, and I won't read all of them, but the ones that look like this are just showing those growth areas by school site and then by student groups. And so the only ones I added in here were scores that were at least 5 percentage points above where we performed the year before. So we had other areas of growth that might have been 1 or 2 or 3 or 4, but I didn't include those because those may not be statistically significant. But once we hit about 5, we can be pretty solid in that. And so you can see double digits all over the place. I just want to pause on the middle school slide so you can see 6th grade math, 7th grade math, 8th grade math, 6th grade, 7th grade, 8th grade English, and one of just a couple schools that made some really great gain in science as well. On this next slide, again, Mary Farmer, 5th grade math, 17 points. I did get a call from another school district asking what we were doing, which was, it just felt great to be able to brag for a little bit. Robert Semple, you can see, we even had some cohort growth, and remember, cohort is the same students. So how they did as 4th graders, and then how did those same students do as 5th graders. And then these next several slides are just more detail around our student groups. And so you see students with 2 or more races. At Joe Henderson, they made 16 percentage point gains. Benicia Middle School, African American students, 17 percentage points. So in our Hispanic, we made a lot of gains with our students who are Hispanic or Latino. You can see that at many of the schools. And then these are our students with disabilities. That's another place where you can see some growth. In math, we've always performed better in math than we have in ELA, which has been interesting to me, and hence one of the reasons we've changed our curriculum as well. So you can see that we have some great growth across many of our schools here as well. I want to shout out to Mary Farmer, students with disabilities, 20 percentage points growth. And then I'm going to jump down here to, there's a series of these slides, but I wanted to show you this one. Just to explain how to read that, and then if you have questions on them, I'll go back. This is 25, I'm sorry, I just skipped all the way to the last Robert Semple math achievement. What I was trying to illustrate in this slide is the dotted line is the overall performance in math at Robert Semple. And then those other lines are the different student groups. And you can see where that overall line is, and then that green line is our Hispanic students and how it gets close. So that's the closing of the gap. And so what I was trying to illustrate in all of those slides is not everywhere, but that's part of it, right? We want to have that gap closed. And you can see our students with disabilities line is going way up, but when it curves up further at the far end to the right in the 24 school year, we're starting to close those gaps. And so that's what these slides are about. If you want me to go through more of them, I can, but I wanted to just kind of point that out. And then, of course, we always have places to grow. And the primary group across the district that we have to dig in a little bit deeper is with our English learners primarily in English language arts, which in some ways makes sense. I did some digging, and we have about 50% of our English learner students in the district, our multi-language learners, are at a level 1 or 2. And so they are our newcomers or our students who are just really beginning to grasp that English language that can pass that part on the test. The test is really hard. Not this test, I'm sorry, the LPAC, which is the test that they have to take. But we have a majority of our students that are at that lower level. We would expect them to probably not do as well yet on the English test. They do better on the math, but not as well on the English test. So we have, but you can also see, while we have some places where the decline is pretty big, most of them are in the single digits. So we're still working on that. And then I'm just going to take you through a couple of these. This is how did Benicia perform in ELA in our county, and you can see that we still are the highest performing in the county. And I will say, we're not where we want to be. We're still in the 50% of achievement, but if we can continue to make those kind of gains, we're going to see that continue to go up. And then in mathematics, we are, again, really much higher than everyone else, both in the state and in the county. And again, we still have a lot of room to grow. Okay. The next, and then this is science. So we now have 3 years of science data. And while we're not where we want to be, we again have grown, made some gains, and we're quite a bit higher than everyone else. And then this last slide just shows how each grade level did. So every grade level went up, which was great. And then the next series of slides I'm not going to go through unless you would like me to, and they are just at the district level, every school site level, by grade level and student groups. Okay, just so you could see the growth over the years post-COVID, because one of the things that, remember that the test really changed from pre-COVID to post. Did you want me to go through these, or are you okay if I skip ahead? Okay, so I'm going to skip. There's a lot of them. And so we did a lot of reflecting on why this kind of growth this year. And I think one of the biggest things was mindset. And I have to give credit to Dr. Wright's message the last couple of years before, at the beginning of school, when he charged us to be #1 in the state, and that we really could do even more for our students than we were. As he said, hey, not everybody loved all of that message, but I think it really gave us a call to action to say, what are we doing and what do we need to do differently? We have amazingly dedicated and committed teachers and administrators that took that to heart and are working on behalf of all students. We gave a charge to all of our schools and our teachers to be really aligned and intentional in their instructional practices, using our adopted curriculum with intentionality and all the components of it. Our teachers are using the NWEA data on a more regular basis and really starting to see how they can use that to identify areas that they need to work with small groups of students in. We have more mathematics collaboration happening at our different levels. More teachers are using Imagine Learning, which is a supplemental curriculum, and we've really correlated teachers who are using that with intentionality on a regular basis to more student growth. So that's it's an online assessment. Not assessment. Oh, I'm sorry.
I know Imagine Learning is an online, but they don't, I mean, it's not, is that something they do above their regular?
Right. So they might do centers, and maybe the teacher, especially at the elementary school, would call and do some direct teaching with a small group of students or some reteaching, and a group would be doing Imagine on the computers, and another group might be doing the math games that come with the curriculum, and then they rotate through that.
I was curious on how it should be thinking.
We did it for homework in elementary school, Imagine Math.
Right. And it is, kids can use it for homework. We also use it in part of the ELOP program. So we do use that platform because it adjusts to where students are, and you could also designate a path or a student if they need to go back and really work on something else. You can align them with Another big thing is just positive messaging and using data for goal setting. And so I think those are some of the key things that helped this impact. And then things that we're going to continue, that we are continuing this year, is that we have a new ELA curriculum. So we are very hopeful that we'll see those English scores start to creep up with the same bolster that we're seeing the math scores. We've got some teacher support happening. We've got one of the other really big things that we're doing this year, and I have to give a shout out to Ms. Rice and to Mr. Phillips and Aaron Bieber, is really working hard to ensure that our teachers who teach our students in special education have the right curriculum, have the training that they need. And so we've been really working closely with them on that as well. We're doing learning walks. We talk about what we're seeing in classrooms, and we're monitoring student progress. So those are the things that we're going to keep doing to ensure that we keep heading in these directions. Any questions?
Just a hearty thank you. Thank you, admin, for taking care of our students, and it's great to see some of the positive changes. I mean, that's just incredible. So thank you back there.
Yeah, I want to say thank you as well. And then I really hope that Dr. Beatson, that this is an opportunity for maybe to do a presentation and just kind of showcase some of the things that's been happening. So I don't know, at AXA conferences or other opportunities, but I think it'd be a good thing because, you know, a lot of times districts and, you know, folks working in the school systems are trying to look for ways to make things better. And so, you know, mindset is a really big deal. So, I mean, hopefully you guys will think about that.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Beatson, again. Next up, we have the first reading of the recommended California School Board Association, which is acronym of CSBA, Board Policy Updates for July 2024 and September 2024. And there are quite a few. So Dr. Wright, if you wouldn't mind.
Right. So in your packet, you'll find the first reading for July and also September. If you review the July packet, you're going to find that the changes reflect changes in the law, mainly due to Title IX. So CSBA recommendations, change of law. So in the July packet is really related to the change in law to Title IX. And in September, a lot of CSBA recommendations, but there are a few policies that we recommended as staff. So I just want to highlight a couple of them just so you're aware. The first one would be Board Policy 1114 and AR 1114. It's a district-sponsored social media board policy. Now, we brought this forward. CSBA brought forward a recommended policy. There's a neighboring district that strengthened their language in order to protect the rights of the employees that are victimized by attacks online. And talking with legal counsel and other superintendents, we thought that this language would be beneficial here in Benicia as well, just in the event that on a social media platform, a district platform, there's disruptive or threatening or obscene language that's appearing on those websites. It gives us a little more flexibility to remove that post and to protect our employees. So that's why we brought this language forward. And it's been vetted by legal as well. The second policy I wanted to bring to your attention is Board Policy 7310. Now, and this is naming of a facility, right? So during my tenure here, I've seen things come across my desk and I'm like, wow, that logo looks a little bit different than it did last week, right? And for the better, there are great changes. Mike Sharif, who's done our website, he put together a branding package. He's got all the latest logos, the logos ready to go. The color schemes, it's letterhead, it's all beautiful and ready to go. But we wanted to bring forward this policy to the board because we need to have a little bit more structure So if you do want to change your logo, or you do want to change the name of your facility, or whatever it is, you have to have a committee and take it to the board for action. So we just wanted to add a little bit more structure to that policy so that, yeah, there's a process in place. And then the third policy that I wanted to bring to your attention is Board Policy 3350, which is travel expenses. Essentially what we're saying here is that when we go on for conferences or trips, using the GSA rate, the government rate in terms of meals for reimbursement. If you look at our current policy, there's a lot of wiggle room and flexibility. And we just think that we need to just go with the GSA rate, and there's any questions, you have to get pre-approval for anything other than that. So I wanted to bring those three policies to your attention. The rest of the policies are CSBA recommended or changes in law.
So the question, is there a stipend that we need to follow on those kind of things? Or like for meals at breakfast, I mean, is it, for anybody that goes to training, is there a certain amount of money that we're allowed to spend, and everything over that is personal?
There is, and that will be reflected in depending on where you travel to. So if you travel to San Diego, that rate may be a little bit higher than you travel to Fresno. So
the location.
that information will be given to you prior to your trip.
Thank you. Any questions? All right. We're going to move on to the next item, which is addressing Benicia Unified School District funding realities and strategies for sustainability. Dr. Wright, please.
All right. You know, it's always our goal as a district to provide the best opportunity for our students. And when we're offering programs, you know, there's usually a financial cost associated with those programs. But as a district, it's also our goal to try to remove some of those financial barriers and explore any and all opportunities to make sure that our programs are competitive with those across the state. We heard Dr. Beatson just say, and we've been messaging it, that we want to be the best in the state, and we want our programs to reflect that. And it's because our students deserve it and our community deserve it. And when our students look for post-secondary opportunities, they're competing against those other students who are in neighboring districts. So tonight, I'm going to review our funding realities as it reflects our one-time grants, discuss potential strategies to generate revenue in our district, and also just engage in discussion regarding the topic. Now, as a district, we've been sharing information regarding the state and federal one-time grants since 2020 when we started getting that additional money. Dr. Beatson gave a presentation on October 3rd at our previous governing board meeting, highlighting the programs that are funded by those one-time grants. And I'm not going to repeat her presentation, but I just want to highlight just some of the high points. We've received approximately $14 million in one-time money since 2020. This district did an excellent job, governing board, LCAP committee, district office, and really maximizing that money and stretching it out over time, over several years. Not all districts did that. But unfortunately, that funding is starting to sunset, not only in BUSD, but across the state. It's a topic of conversations when you're talking with other superintendents. It's like, what are we going to do? The one-time money is sunset. And as we mentioned, we have enough funds for the services that we have in place this year and to partially fund next year. And this slide should look very familiar to you. These are the programs that are funded through our LCAP, our one-time money, and it's listed by LCAP goal: literacy and humanities, math, STEAM, and equity. And you'll also see the dollar amount that it costs to operate those programs on an annual basis. If you look at that list, everything on that list is important, everything. And just to highlight a couple, our wellness centers are listed, campus supervision, the new teacher coach that Dr. Beeson just referenced, intervention assistance, support for band, Willie B. Atkins. These are all very important programs to our organization and to our students. Also, just to give you a little bit more detail about the one-time grants and where we, at the end of last year, we had about $3.5 million. And this year, we expect to spend about $2.5 million on these programs, which leaves about $1 million for next year. Simple math will tell you we're about $1.5 million short of offering that same program. And I just want to be very clear on what that means. It's November right now, and prior to March 15th, 2025, we're going to have to make program and staffing reductions to accommodate the deficit that we see. And this isn't new information. These funding realities are hard. They impact morale, they impact people, families, our programs, our organizations. So it always warrants additional discussion and planning, because the programs that we actually put in place helped us move the needle through the pandemic. As Dr. Beatson went through her presentation just a little while ago, yeah, we are making some growth and we are getting noticed. We're talking about being best in the state, and they're asking, hey, Dr. Beatson, what is Benicia doing with the math scores? I got some of those inquiries as well. Dr. Ovick got some of those inquiries. Hey, Benicia's coming up a lot. And he says, well, how do you know about this? He says, well, I heard you're doing some things with attendance and foster youth. So we are on the radar, and we're definitely making some progress. And these programs have become the foundation of our district LCAP, and our goals is really part of our fabric. So I don't think I'm alone when I say I don't want these programs to go away, or at least not without a fight, or exploring all the potential options we can to save them. I think we owe that to our staff and our students. Combination of factors that added to the success. As Dr. Beatson shared, the assessment gains. We have a long way to go, but we're trending in the right direction. Post-COVID, we dipped from 96% attendance rate to 92.65% during the 22-23 school year. Last year, we brought it back up to about 94, a little over 94% for last school year. Now you look at, it's like, oh, that's 2%. That might not be a big gain. It's huge, right? Because if we were being funded on current year ADA, that would be $665,000 more that we would have brought to our general fund. And the positive information is that as we look at our numbers now, we continue to trend upward. So we're going to see additional gains, which would bring in additional revenue to our district. So I just got to thank Dr. Ovick for leading the effort, but our site administrators, staff, students, everybody for making attendance a priority. We surveyed our new teachers. As you know, we had our retirement incentive last year. We've hired several teachers this year, 11 alone at the middle school, but we have a new teacher coach, and it's going very well. Some of the feedback that we received is like, thank you. This conversation is really helping with the planning, behavior management, classroom management. We're excited to have these meetings with you, and I feel supported as a new teacher. So you think about those interventions and how many students it's impacting, it's outstanding. Wellness center, we've got to talk about our wellness centers. We have wellness centers on every single one of our campus, and we got some data. From August 13th to October 29th of this year, there were 5,756 visits to the wellness center. Out of those visits, 5,397 students reported feeling better after leaving. That's about 96%. We surveyed staff, students, and parents regarding the programs that we shared just a little bit ago. And, we actually got an overwhelming response. Sometimes when you send out surveys, you don't know how many folks are going to respond. We had 1,021 students respond, 540 parents respond, and 211 staff members respond. And we asked them to rank from highest to lowest. Wellness centers came out on top. A lot of support for the mental health clinician, funding support for band, noon duty supervision, and our intervention programs were amongst the top programs that all of our groups felt that were beneficial to student growth and the impact that they're having on their schooling. We've talked about California funding at this dais quite a bit. And, and like many school districts, Benicia, we find ourselves feeling underfunded and really limited on how to generate revenue and bring it to our district. Only a few ways you can do it. You can increase enrollment, which we do. I think we have to remember that we are in declining enrollment, and approximately 14 to 15% of our students come from outside of our boundary areas. So we are increasing enrollment by accepting IDAs, I'm sorry. You can increase funding by ADA, average daily attendance. We are doing that. We talked about the attendance program that's being led by Dr. Ovick. Fundraising, our PTGs, they are fundraising machines, and they work really hard for our students in our district. And a final area is parcel tax, and it's something that we haven't really talked about much in this district that I would like to touch on in a bit. And this isn't, I just want to make sure that, over the past couple of years, we've talked about generating revenue. But now it's time to talk, and we have to move to purposeful action, right? We're at a point where we're losing some from critical programs. And how do we streamline our fundraising with our nonprofits that we're currently working with, the vendors? How do we tap into our vendors? And how do we reach out to our community to get some additional support? We need to be mindful of our spending, and we've done so. We've done the strategic planning this summer, which really gave us a blueprint on how do we prioritize our program, and in the event that we do have to make reductions, how do we approach that? And that was great work that we did this summer, and we do have that blueprint to fall back on. And as a result of our strategic plan, you'll see with our board packets change. You'll see contracts listed in there and how much we're spending on the contracts. You'll also see references to the strategic plan goals when there's spending attached, just so the board can kind of get an idea of what are we spending money on and how are we prioritizing it. We really value our organizations, our professional organizations, PTGs, our PTOs, and our vendors. But we're a small town, and we have a tendency to tap the same people. I mean, we've got youth sports, we have Boy Scouts, we have our PTGs. And then when you get to the high school, then you talk about, we have our booster programs, we have our band boosters, we have our drama boosters, and there's even discussion of athletic boosters making a comeback, and I think they're pretty close to organizing. So when you have all these groups tapping the same folks within the city limits, it becomes problematic. But so as I think about this, and as I thought about these one-time grants potentially going away, it just kind of just reinvigorated this vision on the group supporting BUSD. How can we all work together and be a little bit more efficient in our work, right? Instead of tapping folks on the shoulder every 5 minutes. I mean, you can donate $100, but if someone taps you 4 different times for $25, it feels like a lot more. So just being mindful of that. So how do we work together and organize and streamline our efforts? How do we calendar fundraising so we're not stepping on each other's fundraising? And also, how do we make agreements on the activities that we're actually fundraising for? So this vision it will definitely enable us to fundraise outside of our city limits as well. Strengthening our partnerships with our vendors are very important. Give them an easy way to support our programs. Currently, there's no Ed Foundation, and I think that's the missing link. So when you have organizations like Valero and people in it, they don't have a place to come and donate. That's easy, right? When did that disappear? I'm gonna just, I wasn't here when it disappeared. I think it disappeared right around COVID, is that right?
Yeah, I believe so.
A little bit before.
It was before COVID.
There was membership confusion and as far as how they were doing the accounting and that kind of thing. So they had to kind of go back and it's the same people doing the same job all the time. So
Yeah.
it becomes, it's cumbersome for people that are always volunteering. And we all know how that is. So, so that's why, to answer your question.
Yeah. And we've had discussions over this over the last couple of years. I meet with the PTG groups or lead fundraising groups at all the school sites. We've been doing it for the last couple of years and engaging in conversations. And we're at a point now where they look forward to those meetings because they're sharing information, they're sharing fundraising strategies, they're monitoring each other's calendars. So some of this work is already starting. I mean, at the very initial stages, but at least that conversation amongst all the groups is taking place. We've generated a list of vendors. I reached out to the city. Give me a list of some of the businesses in town. I think it's time that we need to start strengthening our relationships with our businesses, local businesses, and also our vendors, right? People that we do business with. But it's tough because working for the school district and talking about the vendors donating to our cause, you cross some gray areas there. So really having that Ed Foundation to help with that work and help work with our vendors would be key. As I think about the relationships that we currently have in place, those that we're going to establish in the future, again, that missing component is the Ed Foundation. But the Ed Foundation can provide that financial support to the district programs, but also they can provide that equity value. I mean, we have some PTGs will sit down and do an auction and bring in $100,000 off on an auction, and then we have a PTG group that will hustle and maybe bring in $10,000, right? So there's inequities there. And our students are all going to the same place. They're going to go to the same middle school. They're going to go to the same high school. So it becomes very complicated. So that PTG group can really help with some of that equitable distribution of funds to all of our students within our group, making sure that they have a minimal level of program. They can also serve as that communication link for fundraising groups. So there is some cohesion in fundraising efforts, and also make it easy for our corporations to donate. We've done some research. We've met with past presidents and members of the BEF. We're still collecting information. There's a couple of more meetings that we need to have before we feel like we can move forward. We're actually scheduling meetings with Ed Foundations from other districts so that we can learn on how are they successful. We've reached out, and actually some of the members of our PTO groups, they've done that on their own, and they're ready to share some information. So we do have some momentum going there. And some of the volunteers from those groups have expressed interest in assisting in reestablishing the Ed Foundation. So we're looking at having a meeting probably around December 10th, somewhere in that area, to continue that conversation. Now, districts doing some research on parcel tax. Districts, and particularly in the Bay Area, use a parcel tax option to bring additional revenue to their organization, to their districts. And as I reviewed the list of districts who've successfully passed parcel tax, it was pretty easy to see that there was a correlation between the community support and the success and a reputation that they carry in our state. San Ramon, Livermore, the Palo Altos, Alameda, Davis, Piedmont, Milpitas, Fremont, Saratoga, Mountain View, Los Gatos. And we can also look, right? There's an income, there's definitely, they generate some income. But as we talk about jumping into deeper waters and competing with some of the best districts in the state, this is the company that we need to keep. So as we talk about like what is a parcel tax, much different than a facilities bond. We did a lot of facilities bond work last year with Measure C. But a parcel tax is it's a tax that assessed to a rate based on the characteristics of a parcel, so basically a unit of property. So it generates, funds are generated from parcel tax can be used for whatever the taxpayers agree to fund when we put it on the ballot. And typical uses are for maintaining educational programs, could be for transportation, reducing class sizes, textbooks, extracurricular activities, staffing, social emotional wellness programs. Again, it would fund anything that the taxpayers would agree to fund. Specifically looking at Benicia, I think I might have, there we go. We have about 10,500 parcels in our city in Benicia. And a district, as you look at parcel tax, you have options on how you're going to set up that tax structure. A lot of districts set up a flat tax rate so that every parcel pays the same amount. So I think as a district, we would say, just for simple math, we'd say we want to fundraise about $1 million. There's 10,500 parcels. We could do a flat rate fee of $100 regardless of the parcel size. That would generate about $1 million of revenue to the district. It's simple, it's easy to predict, and you know how much you're generating. There's some districts that do equity-based models. The equity-based model is usually based on square footage, right? So if I have, because in a flat rate, if I have a 500 square foot property versus somebody like Valero that may be sitting on acres and we're both paying $100, they're gonna be like, well, are they paying their fair share, right? Right. So the equity-based model, you're able to do it based upon square footage. And, but when you do it based on square footage, there's also a maximum amount that you can ask for. So just to give you an example, Alameda Unified School District and what they did, they actually have 2 parcel taxes that they pass that generates $24 million per year, and they use this model. Yeah, $24 million a year on 2 parcels. You can go to their website, it's right there. But what they did was they did 0.265 per building area square foot annually, and they did it over a 7-year period. And their annual cap was $7,999. So regardless on how big your parcel was, you were not going to pay over that amount. And if you had a vacant parcel, the charge was $299. And then senior citizens and community members or people who are on disability, they were exempt from paying that parcel tax, and they were able to put that in there. So some communities think that the equity base or the square footage model is a fair way to.
Have you seen rates in terms of passage between the flat rate model and the
I don't know the rates off the top of my head, but I think most districts, I think most people use a flat base rate. I'm tongue-tied, guys. It's a tongue twister. It is. Yeah. I think the equity model isn't used as much, but I will say, in talking to some of the consultants that understands Benicia, that the equity-based model would probably be the thing that we would want to look at here. Yeah. Let's see here.
Say that you didn't mention senior citizens in that group, did you?
Yeah, senior citizens.
Okay.
Yeah, senior citizens, you can exempt from the parcel tax, and I think folks with disabilities as well.
Oh, okay.
And I think there's some others that you can as well.
I was just wondering, like, with our population, you know, there's probably a lot of senior citizens, so I don't know, you know, like if they could really look at like the numbers and, you know, give different options and how it would play out. So.
Yeah, and I think, and I'll get to that a little bit later in the presentation. I think if we opt to do the surveying, you will get additional information. You know, talking about taxes is a controversial topic, particularly here in Benicia. We have some tax sensitivity, but we'll never know if this is a viable option if we don't go out and survey, do some community outreach, and get an idea if the community is willing to fund this. We believe that the programs that are attached to the one-time grant, such as the social emotional wellness, our community may have an interest in that, but there may be other areas. Our community, we may survey them, and they may say, you know what, we're more interested in funding extracurricular activities or textbooks or maybe a transportation program. So that outreach is very important to determine the next steps in this process.
Can I ask you, I don't want to interrupt you,
No, sure.
you're on a roll, but so with the parcel tax, can we can allocate the money from that toward something specific?
Yes.
That's the idea. So we
Yes.
would identify the need, and then that money only goes for that.
That is correct.
Okay.
And you would identify the need before it goes on a ballot so the voters have an idea of what they're supporting. And what we would put on a ballot would be based upon the survey results that we get from.
So it's similar
community.
to the bond in a way.
Similar.
In that way.
Very similar. But parcel taxes, they're hard to pass because there's a high threshold. You know, it requires a 2/3 majority vote, right? So for every 1 no vote, you need 2 yes votes. And that really prevents districts or deters them for even attempting parcel taxes. And to be completely honest, they've been unsuccessful in Solano County. Benicia Unified, we've went out for a couple of parcel taxes in the early 2000s. I think we came pretty close. We're a few percentage points away on one, and then I think we're just a couple of hundred votes off on another. So, I mean, we came pretty close to passing it. Competing proposals, sometimes there's other tax initiatives on a ballot. Tax fatigue, I know we just went out for a facilities bond last year, and while we did not increase the tax rate, we are aware that we asked our community to at least extend a commitment. The city, we've got to monitor the city. They've had a few tax initiatives on a ballot the last couple of elections and rumored to maybe have another one in the near future. But I did do some research last night as well, and I did learn that parcel taxes, there is a way that you can pass a parcel tax with a simple majority, which would be 50% plus one. And it's very similar to what our city did with the road tax, and that is to, you do a citizens initiative. So if there's a citizens initiative and the citizens actually go out and get signatures, it's probably about 2,000 signatures. They go out and get 2,000 signatures and they put it on the ballot themselves, then you can pass it at 50% plus one. And this is relatively new, and I've made some calls, I've talked to some consultants, and hasn't really been tested with school districts, but it has been used in other city entities, and we know that our city just did it, and it's been used in fire. And a lot of folks were holding back because the Supreme Court hadn't officially ruled whether or not they were going to take action on that or not. But I think that's been resolved in my conversations, my understanding. So that is a opportunity for us, something that we could explore.
Regarding the parcel tax, and you were just saying something about
The Citizens Initiative?
Citizens Initiative. Does that make us still have to go out with the professional company to do that? Do we need to still do that? Because that's a money saving, it could potentially be money saving for the district.
It could, and the reason why I think it's important to still go out is that it gives us data and it gives us information on what the community is interested in supporting. I have ideas. I just went over these one-time grants, programs that are attached to these one-time grants that have helped us move the needle over the last couple of years that I'm concerned about losing. And sometimes you can't attach hard data to how a wellness center may have helped the student stay at school that day or attend school that day. It's all connected. But we may go out to the community and they may say, you know what? Yeah, I like this idea, but I'm not sure that I want to support that. I'd rather support band, or I'd rather support athletics. We don't have athletic trainers. It could be something else. So I think going out and engaging with the community and having that conversation, making sure that there's an awareness, I think it's important. And unfortunately, it doesn't come at a cheap cost. And I've reached out to some consultants over the last few weeks, and it would cost to survey anywhere from $17,000 to $30,000 to do a survey. Now, and I have 4 proposals sitting on my desk. I will say that 3 out of the 4 proposals that are on the higher end of that are consistent. And what they do is they would do a mixed method study, which would be interviews and surveys. And they would use text messaging, emails, and also phone calls to reach our residents so that they can engage with them. The other company, which is at the lower end, which is about 18,000, they would do telephone calls and try to reach our residents. So, I think we have to weigh what information and what data that we're trying to bring in. But yeah, there is a cost to survey. And then you've got the campaigning piece, which it wouldn't come at a cost to the district, but it would come at a cost to fundraise, because we can't pay for a campaign, but we'd have to fundraise those costs, which would be probably around $50,000 to run that campaign, plus probably a monthly retainer for that particular consultant. And then you got to think about the cost of the election and putting it on the ballot. I don't have those numbers today. It's kind of hard to get a contact with the registrar of voters at this time of year. Can imagine, but it's you know, there's a cost. But I think it's a mindset that we've got to understand that we're never going to know if we don't explore. At least take that initial step and see if our community is behind this, or if they can get behind it, and if they can, what programs are they willing to support? And from there, we can determine, okay, do we need to do a citizens initiative route, or do we need to run a large campaign, or can it be a small campaign? We may survey and it may come back at 65%, and at that point, we know that we can just make a couple phone calls and talk to some of our community members and get it passed. But it may come back at 60%. We may have to run a little bit more of a campaign. So that initial step, the surveying, is that critical piece.
Oh, absolutely.
Dr. Wright, can you remind me of when we were doing the parcel tax, there was something about,
The bond?
excuse me,
the
the
bond,
bond,
okay.
the bond.
Okay.
There was something about how the survey was conducted. And I believe, was it through landlines?
It was.
It was. So most people, or many people, don't have landlines anymore. So if we went with a company to do a survey, what have we learned from the way the bond survey was done and now?
That's why I wanted to mention that we put, I'm looking at 4 proposals. And I mentioned a little while ago that there's a company that for $18,000, we can get some data. Or if we go and do the mixed method, more in the $25,000 to $30,000 range, we would be able to get information. They would go through text messaging, they would go through emailing, and they would also go through phone calls. And they would do interviews, and they would do surveys. So I would say, if you're asking what we learned, I personally would want to do a thorough job with a parcel tax, seeking information about a parcel tax. I think when we went through with the facility bond, yeah, it was, it's been a long night, I'm sorry. We were in a different situation. We were extending a tax that was already there. And I think we got enough information where we felt comfortable where we can move forward and go ahead with the campaign. But I think as we consider this parcel tax, I would lean towards a very deep study so that we can learn what our community, really learn what our community values, and really learn, get that information and use it to our advantage to try to move this needle forward.
If it was a community initiative, how would that work? They wouldn't be surveying. What's the preliminary part of that?
Well, I think the survey gets done regardless, right? But if we have, let's just say we had a group of eager parents that came in here and said, you know what, I heard you talking about the parcel tax at the board meeting and you really inspired me. See, I'm throwing a little bit more on it, right? I heard you talking about the parcel tax and we're behind this and we want to lead this campaign, and they have a committee and they're out there, and we would probably supply them with data and information, but there would be a committee of community members that would go out and get signatures. And you get it probably, I think it's around 2,000-ish signatures. It's a percentage of how many registered voters we have here. And I think we have just over 20,000. So I'm thinking it's probably somewhere in that 2,000 range. I don't know if my math is right, but I think it's about 2,000 signatures that we would have to get. 10%. It's 10%. So that would be that process, but it still should start with the survey.
My question is, because we have a large senior community here, because I love this idea, either which way we go, I don't know that people are going to answer their doors, that they're going to answer their phones, and their email, stuff like that, may go to junk mail, and it may completely distort that 10% that we're trying to gauge the, being able to do this. So that concerns me a bit. They don't do anything by mail.
I can check, and again,
Probably be more money.
oh, I think it could be, but I'm going to trust the consultant, in looking at their proposals and the districts that they work with. There's one particular consultant, they passed the parcel tax in Davis. One just passed one in Milpitas. And Milpitas just passed one a couple of days ago, and they're having the same conversation that we're having. She gave me a call today, and she says, hey, I thought about the conversation that we had because you were talking about the one-time funding going away, and Milpitas had the same scenario. And they actually did the survey, and it was like borderline whether or not they were going to pass. And they went out there, and they were confident, and they had grassroots effort, and they went into the community and had conversations with the folks, and they passed it. And that's their second parcel tax that they have. And I'm not a fan of taxing people ever, but I do know that the situation that we're in and how we're funded through LCFF, we're middle class LCFF, we're not going to get the additional funding. And the only way that we're going to generate revenue to offer the level of programs that our students deserve is to take some risk, have some conversations, and try to generate revenue through parcel tax, organizing our PTGs, reaching out to our vendors and getting our Ed Foundation together. I just feel like it's Groundhog Day, and I can do Groundhog Day a couple of times, but when we're having that same conversation over and over and over again, it's like we're either going to do something about it or we're not. And if we're not, then that's okay. Then let's make adjustments to our program and move accordingly. But if we're going to offer, if we aim to offer programs that are competitive with all the other programs in the state, then we at least need to put this information out there and let our community decide.
Let them know.
Yeah, this is it.
Yeah, and I appreciate that a lot, and we just went through an election, and I think we are tax weary as a city. I think it's also important, though, that the community understands the limitations that we have due to the way we're funded by the state and our need to pay our people and pay them enough so that they want to work here and stay here, because it's just number one. Right? And if you look, as a newer board member, looking at the budget, I've looked at that thing inside and out. And it just amazes me at, we just do not get the funding from the state that we need, period. And it really impacts what we can offer the students.
Yep.
Another consideration that I think we have to have, or at least talk about, is timing. Like, when is the right time to do it? Is there never really a right time to ask folks for money? But if this is something that we wanted to have funding for next school year, we would have to move pretty quickly. Because, and I don't know if this is realistic or not, but I just wanted to just give you the options, because if we're looking at funding for next school year, the board would, it's cold. The board would have to take action to put it on a ballot by March, which means we would have to survey pretty quickly to get the information to make the decision to put it on the ballot by March, because the election has to be completed by June 30 in order to get the money for that year. Anything beyond that, we're talking about the following year, which would be 25-26. So then if you're looking at a November, then we've got, 26-27, I'm sorry. So if we're looking at November, then the board would need to take action by July, right? And if we're looking at March, yeah, you've got there's an 88-day window. So essentially, if you do the backwards math from 88 days, you have to run a 88-day election period. So, timing is of the essence as well. So if it's something like, let's see if we can get this in place for next school year, then we know that we need to act pretty quickly. If we're looking like, we probably need a little bit more runway and run a longer campaign, then we have a little bit more time. we would be looking at that following school year.
It seems like we don't have time if we want to keep all these programs.
March,
Jobs.
yeah, and in that scenario, and let's just play this out. If we were to pass a parcel tax, come March 15th, unfortunately, we don't have funding, identified funds to save these programs. And we are, yeah, we're there, unfortunately. However, can we bring them back if we get funding and we pass this thing by June 30th and we get funding, we bring them back? Or if it's the following year, we bring the programs back or whatever the parcel tax is willing to fund.
Are classified people given RIF notices like a teacher reduction in force?
Yeah, that's changed as well. So classified staff members, it's March 15th as well.
But I don't think everyone understands the difference between just being like, oh, and a reduction in force level. You know, reduction in force means we don't currently have the money. So we're letting you know now you could be, you know, so you have the ability to let them go, but if the money comes in.
Then they go on the rehire list. Yeah.
Yeah, as opposed to just cutting people loose.
Right, yeah, they would go on the rehire list. So essentially, if you do lay somebody off and you bring back that same particular position, then that person would have rights to that position based on seniority.
Approve the PARS.
Early retirement incentive.
Yes, the PARS retirement incentive last year. And we had 44 people retire or take the early retirement. How has that affected our budget this year? Do you know? I mean, that's probably a tricky question, but.
It is something that we are looking at. What we have to see is who was hired back into positions. Did the person who left, did they cost significantly more than the person who came and filled it? For the most part, we haven't found that exactly. It's then looking at the positions that weren't refilled. Was it enough to offset the annual $750,000 cost we have for the people who did take the PARs? So seeing if it's a wash yet. And when it came through, it was talked about it would be future savings, not necessarily
Yes,
in the year.
understood.
So there is 5 years of the PARS payment. That will drop off after 5 years. We should absolutely see it then. But it matters who we hired back into the vacancies. Were we able to bring the less expensive employee on? And for the most part, we haven't really found that because we were able to hire well-seasoned employees.
I think it's also important to remember what the PARS did for us last year is that it avoided major layoffs last March. There was $1.3 million that we had to reduce. And by doing an early retirement incentive, we were able to do it through attrition versus provide the pink slip. So that was number one. And then after that was, okay, we may generate savings over a 5-year period of time.
I don't know, historically speaking, has Benicia Unified, I don't know if anybody knows this, have we ever been able to pay for the extracurricular activities without having to tap the community like we do now? Because there's a lot of fundraising going on. As a parent, I get requests if your child is in sports at the high school, that's $250 off the top. Then there's additional fundraising for each sport. If you're in band, wow, a lot of money that you're paying for that. And I just and then with all the auctions and then the school supply requests, the classrooms need funds and supplies, and I just wonder, just historically speaking, has it been like that for a long time? I think it has, but I don't know for sure.
It has.
Yeah.
For a long time.
I remember the days when I was a principal, a couple of districts, and the message is athletics, it's self-funded, meaning you got to fundraise it, and the district typically paid for safety equipment, stipends, maybe contributed some to transportation. So it does require a lot of fundraising, and it's tough.
Yeah. So it's, I mean, it's not, it's a need we've had for a long time. And at this point, we're looking at what are our solutions here? Because it's tough on the whole community and our businesses. I get comments from businesses saying, can you guys, coordinate? Because we get contacted by every single school multiple times a year and teams, so it's a lot. It's a lot on our community.
Yeah, so the hope through this is, one, as you said, organized so that the fundraising is unified and is streamlined, so that multiple people aren't tapping, our partners. And then the other piece is, how do we generate additional revenue? So I don't know if there's any additional questions, but in terms of the presentation, that's what I have. And I guess what I'm asking for from the board is, a little bit of direction. Are we in a place where we feel like we're okay to go out and explore and talk with the consulting companies and seeing if we can, is there a timeline that you have in mind? Would you like to go out now? Would you like to wait in January?
I would like to go out now because you've laid it out. We have these programs that we have deemed that are important. We do not have the money for the next fiscal year to cover those programs. So, I mean, you got to go out. We have to go out now. We have to try, to me at least, and see if we can get something to save those programs. Because if not, if we wait, then we're still going to have to cut for next year. If we want to keep everything, to me, I'd like to do it that way. I know it's a shorter runway, as you said, but if we deem these important.
Agreed. And, we could go out now and realize and get to a point where, like, okay, we may not have enough time and still, and push that timeline back, but going out now at least gives us that information to make that informed decision and give us more options.
Yeah, I agree with what Trustee Maselli said, only because I'm worried about the continuity of the programs and, the support. Like, we're in a place now where students are really, having greater success. And so I think that if things just go away, then it's just going to create like a spiral. So if there is any way to get it as soon as possible, I think, that's the case. At least we have the information, and then you kind of know what direction to go moving forward. So, yeah.
So fellow trustees, do you feel that this is the right time, like right after the election cycle, and city asking for this, and city asking for that, the money-wise, and then instead of waiting until like January to set it up, or maybe mid-January, so it's not with the holidays, because that's another thing, that people have expenses at the holidays and they're just not going to be, I just think they're not going to be as interested at that time.
And I think that brings a good point. And I guess we should define, like, moving right now, what that means. And it is January. It would be January just for that reason, for the holidays. It would take that time to get the contracts going and get established and get organized, but it would probably be early January. And it's a really short runway, because if the results come back favorable, then we know, okay, we need to take action in March so we can get that 88-day window and get it passed by June. But there's enough time to do it. It's just, but if the community is in support of it, and the results come back favorable, and we don't have to run such a large campaign. Now, we may get the results back and it's like, we need a little more runway. So we're going to stretch this out, and maybe we don't do it in March, but we push it to November. And that gives us a little bit more time to have that dialogue with the
I
community.
think the community has to understand, if that is the way it goes, then those programs are going to be lost.
Absolutely.
That has to be spelled out, because people can't go, well, I don't feel like doing this, but wait, what happened to the programs that it's a,
And one of the other things that's going on is that we're hearing about all these schools, all these districts that are in multi-million-dollar deficits. So we're being proactive. We're looking at what's coming. We know what's coming. you and Leslie have been very clear about the one-time monies. And so, I think we could, stand in good stead here. We are proactive.
We're looking for long-time sustainability of our programs, whatever programs they may be. They're all important, and whatever our community is willing to fund, would appreciate it, and it's long-term sustainability. Now, one thing I didn't mention, glossed over, is, typically when people fund these parcel taxes, it's like, well, how long is it? Forever? It could be, but usually it's 3 to 7 years, and then you have to renew it and renew it. There's some districts that are able to get not having to go through that renewal process. So there's some options there. So if the community is like, well, let's put our toe in the water and see how this goes, and they want to do 3 to 7 years, grateful for that, and let's see how it goes. And we just have to put it back on the ballot for renewal. So there is some opportunity there, so people don't feel like it's a lifetime commitment up front.
That's something the surveying firm would find
Yes.
out.
So what I'm hearing us say is to go ahead, right?
I just want to make a comment.
Please.
I mean, my comment really, I'm very hesitant to ask the community for a parcel tax. I'm just very hesitant given just the last year and knowing that more is coming next year. So I'm really trying to be mindful. In my mind, though, I think that the fact that these programs were one-time money that wasn't already in our budget, was one-time money that we got, and it is now gone, and we have invested in programs that are valuable, that we would like to keep. Given that, plus all of the careful budgeting that I know that our CBOs have done over the years, and I think plus for the need to kind of get our arms around all of this fundraising going on. I think it's worth at least exploring the option and see what the community says. We're not going out for it right now. We're just getting more information.
Right.
Right. So I think the consensus is to go ahead and start with the survey and in January and get everything taken care of in advance, and let's see where we are.
I think that in terms of what firm, those upper echelon firms that do the mixed messaging.
Okay.
You get more for what you're doing with them.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank
you.
All right, we're not done yet, guys. We're on our, thank you, Dr. Wright. We're on our action items, and the first one is a public hearing regarding the school facility fee justification report for June 2024. And so for a public hearing, I have to close this out at 7:55, and I have to open it, or actually, Ms. Barrington, yeah, you can explain or go over this as need be, right?
Would you like to open it first? The public hearing?
I thought I just did I not do it?
You close that.
Oh, open public hearing 7:56, and we're going to discuss the school facility fee justification report.
So every 2 years, the State Board of Allocation takes a look at the level 1 developer fees, and that level 1 developer fees is what our district collects. When the State Board of Allocation does this and they raise the developer fees, the district cannot collect a higher fee unless it has done a study. And so that study was done last spring, official in June. It has to come before the board as a public hearing. And then the district can, the board can take action to raise the level 1 developer fees to the new fees that the State Board of Allocation has published. So the state board took action last January, in January of 2024, and they raised the rates that the district is able to collect on permits that are pulled for new construction, expansion of construction. So if you add more than 500 square feet to your property, you have to pay for that. And then as well as the rate for commercial and industrial construction within the city. And so this has been published in the paper twice, as well as the report was publicly available.
Thank you for the explanation. Does anybody have questions regarding this Public hearing. Okay, so can I get a first on this? You want us to vote on this, correct? No public comments? Okay, so I'm going to close us out to, back into open session at 7:57. And thank you. Next up is consideration and approval of resolution number 24-25-14.
Can I
And,
ask,
mhm.
what action did we just take on that?
You didn't.
No action.
Oh, that was just the hearing about the fees. Now we're gonna, okay, I got it. Took me a second.
That's okay. The school facility fee justification, oh wait, I just did that. Consideration and approval of the 2023, wait a minute, no.
So we
School
have to do
facility
B.
fee justification report of June 2024. The increase of developer fees. Ms. Barrington, if you could please explain that. I don't think that's a public hearing.
So we just did the public hearing, and we had no public comments or
comment.
questions. This is for the board to take action to accept the report and increase the district's collected fees to the state board allocation updated fees to the new rates. And then those rates go into effect 60 days after you pass it, if it's passed.
Okay, so we're gonna go out for a vote now. Can I get first?
I
Like,
move that we approve resolution 24-25-14.
thank you. Can I get a second, please?
I'll second.
Thank you. Roll call, please, Ms. Martinez?
President Zeta?
Yes.
Trustee Grips?
Yes.
Trustee Moss? Trustee Maselli?
Yes.
And Trustee Hirsch?
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you again, Ms. Barrington. Next is consideration and approval of the 2023-2024 annual developer fee report. Ms. Barrington, you're up again.
So within 180 days after the close of the fiscal year, which closed June 30th, 2024, a annual report must come to the board to publicly bring forward what was done with the developer fees in the year that is just closed. So there's included in your packet a report. If you go to the last page, it talks about what developer fees the district actually has. So the district started the 23-24 year with just over $30,000, collected just over $34,000 in level 1 fees and interest as well. There were expenditures that as are allowable against those developer fees that have to do specifically with construction of facilities, nothing else. Those are listed, and then the ending balance within our developer fees is just under $33,000. Due to the restriction and growth within the city of Benicia, there are not a lot of permits pulled for new development. So should there be authorized to have new development, then more permits would be pulled. And when you pull a permit, you have a required school impact fee because there's an expectation if a dwelling is built, there is likely going to be an impact on the schools because children would come along with that. And so that's why we must collect them for someone to pull a permit. And so this is just giving an explanation of how we have utilized the fees that have come in.
Can I ask on that? The district-wide professional consulting fees seem to be by far the biggest expenditure. What went into that?
The development of the report to determine if we are eligible to collect level 1 fees.
Wow. Okay.
It
And that is
includes-
standard,
Yes,
and the price is standard?
yes. It's not a very high price, which is good. I mean,
Oh, yeah.
there are higher, but it does take a look at our demographics. It does take a look at what's going in and out. There's not a lot of change that happens within our city and the boundaries, but the study does have to be done to determine if there's an impact. And this is for construction and what we call reconstruction, which is a different term for modernization. So because you're reconstructing things that already exist. And so there has to be a need shown as well as an impact for students that do move into the district. And kids don't come in all at the same age, so the impact could be at various levels. But it does take a look at birth rates and projects out.
Can I tell you how much I appreciate your explanations, your slides? They're so specific. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you for your specificity and for your very astute presentations and explaining. Thank you.
All right.
Does anybody else have a question that could be answered? Okay, then we are going to see if we can get a first on this consideration and
I
approval.
move that we approve the 23-24 annual developer fee report.
Thank you. May I get a second, please?
Second it.
Thank you. Roll call, please, Ms. Martinez.
President Seda.
Yes.
Trustee Grubbs. Trustee Moss. Trustee Maselli.
Yes.
And Trustee Hirsch.
Yes.
All right, thank you. And next up, I guess Dr. Wright's going to be talking about this. I don't see Mr. Phillips here.
Dr. Beatson?
Oh,
I'll take
Dr.
this one.
Beatson. Okay,
Mr. Phillips couldn't be here this evening.
okay.
This is something that we do annually. The Solano Community Advisory Committee has an advisory board that's mandated by the SELPA. And the group serves purposes including annual parent education conferences, awards presentations, and so forth, all around special education. And we have to have a representative from our district sit on that board. Ms. Erin Bieber has done it in the past for us. She's willing to do it again. And so this is just asking if you would reapprove her as the committee representative for Benicia.
Thank you. Are there any questions? No? Okay, can I get,
I'll move
Thank
that
you.
we reapprove Erin Bieber as the Community Advisor Committee representative for Benicia Unified.
thank you. May I get a second, please?
I'll second.
Thank you. Roll call vote, please, Ms. Martinez.
President Seda.
Yes.
Trustee Grubbs. Trustee Moss. Trustee Maselli.
Yes.
And Trustee Hirsch.
Yes.
Thank you. Next up, we have consideration and approval of the variable term waiver request for Certificate of Completion Staff Development CTE teacher. Dr. Jennings, you have sat here so patiently. So I would welcome you to share information on this.
Well, thank you. Good evening, President Zeta. Wow. President Zeta and trustees. This particular item is in reference to a request to do a variable term waiver for one of our CTE teachers that will allow her to teach our multilingual learners that are present in her class. And it's required that it come to the board for your approval before we submit the application to CTC.
I have one question. How long do we give a teacher that's going through the process to complete it and pass it?
So for this particular case, this is a CTE teacher, and so they have already met the requirements for the CTE credential. What they're doing now is what teachers do in terms of that induction process. So she's going through the program to clear her CTE credential. Meanwhile, she has to show that she has done the staff development necessary to be able to teach multilingual learners in her classroom.
Thank you. I appreciate the clarification. Can I get a first on the consideration approval of variable term waiver request for Certificate of Completion of Staff Development, CT's teacher?
I'll make a motion.
Thank you. May I get a second, please?
I'll second it.
Thank you. Roll call, please.
President Seda.
Yes.
Trustee Grubbs. Trustee Moss. Trustee Maselli.
Yes.
And Trustee Hirsch.
Yes.
Okay, next up is consideration and approval of the memorandum of understanding between Cal State University East Bay and the Benicia Unified School District. And I'm gonna, let's see, who is going to be speaking on this?
That would be me again.
Dr. Jennings, thank you.
This MOU describes the partnership between Cal State East Bay's Speech and Language Pathology program. And so this is what's called a SLPA, a Speech and Language Pathologist Assistant, and it allows us to place their interns into our schools and work directly with our speech and language pathologist.
Thank you. And are there any questions? Nope. Okay, can I get a first, please?
I'll make the recommendation that we consider.
It's on, no, no, not G. The one before that.
I'm on F,
Yeah.
So the consideration and ratification.
Thank you. Can I get a second? Thank you. Roll call vote, please.
President Seda?
Yes.
Trustee Gribbs? Trustee Moss? Trustee Maselli?
Yes.
And Trustee Hirsch?
Yes.
All right, next up, don't go far, Dr. Jennings. Consideration and approval of the memorandum of understanding between Benicia Unified School District and the Benicia Teachers Association for Benicia Middle School Special Ed Teacher Support.
Thank you.
You're up.
Given the number of new special education teachers at Benicia Middle School this year, it seemed prudent to provide them with some job-embedded coaching and support, especially on IEP best practices. And so this MOU allows us to provide a stipend to that teacher who's working very closely with our new SPED teachers to ensure that they're implementing those best practices.
Thank you. Are there any questions?
That's very
Okay.
important.
It is very important. I agree.
Legal
I'll
document.
move that we approve the memorandum of understanding between BUSD and Benicia and BTA as presented.
Okay, thank you.
Second.
Thank you. I can tell everybody wants to go home. Okay, roll call, please.
President Seda?
Yes.
Trustee Gribbs? Trustee Moss? Trustee Maselli?
Yes.
And Trustee Hirsch?
Thank you. Finally, consideration and approval of the memorandum of understanding between BUSD and BTA to adjust Benicia High School's stipend list.
So thank you. Principal Kleinschmidt requested that this particular MOU come forward to apply one of the stipends that was not going to be used this year to support the Link Crew, which is a program that supports the transition of students into high school. And so this will allow that person to do the planning and work necessary so they can start that program next year. The middle school has a similar program.
I think it's a great idea.
It is.
Good job. Okay, are there any questions? No? Okay, can I get a first on this, please?
I'll make a motion.
Thank you. May I get a second?
I second it.
Thank you. Roll call, please.
President Seda?
Yes.
Trustee Gribbs? Yes. Trustee Moss? Trustee Maselli?
Yes.
Trustee Hirsch?
Yes.
And just a reminder that our next meeting, we will be swearing in our new board member, and that is on Thursday, December 19th, 2024. And I want to thank our IT folks in the back here keeping us online. Brian and Nicole, thank you as always. Appreciate your help. And with that, I'm going to close our meeting at 8:10.